One split-second decision can change everything. For Officer Raymond Holt, it was the moment he chose to harass a black man walking down the street in an affluent neighborhood. A routine stop and frisk, something he'd done hundreds of times before without consequence. A flex of power that had always gone unchallenged. But this time was different. This time, the man he targeted wasn't a random civilian. This time, the punch he threw wasn't landing on someone who couldn't fight back. This time, the racist remarks he made weren't disappearing into thin air. Because this time, the black man he assaulted was FBI Special Agent Jamal Washington, working deep undercover to investigate police corruption. And every word, every action, every abuse of power was being recorded. Raymond Holt thought he was just having another day on the job. He didn't realize he was about to become the architect of his own destruction. This is the story of how one racist cop's worst instincts led him straight into the perfect trap, one that would expose not just his own corruption, but an entire network of abuse that had festered for years within the Oak Ridge Heights Police Department. Sometimes karma doesn't just come back around. Sometimes it's been watching you all along, gathering evidence and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The summer heat pressed down on Oak Ridge Heights like a weighted blanket, the kind of oppressive warmth that made tempers flare and patience run thin. Officer Raymond Holt rolled down the window of his patrol car, letting the artificial cool of the AC mix with the natural heat. His starched blue uniform was already showing sweat marks beneath the arms despite it being only 10 a.m. At 38, Raymond had spent 15 years on the force, and his face showed every minute of it. Deep lines edged around his eyes, not from laughter, but from narrowing his gaze at those he deemed suspicious. His knuckles, white against the steering wheel, bore the scars of encounters that never made it into official reports. Dispatch to Unit 447, we've got a noise complaint on Willow Street. Neighbor says it sounds like a domestic. Raymond grabbed his radio. Unit 447 responding. ETA 3 minutes. He made a sharp U-turn, cutting off a minivan driven by an elderly woman who honked in protest. Raymond ignored her, his mind already calculating how to handle the call. Domestic disturbances were messy, unpredictable, but they offered opportunities for officers who knew how to work the system. Raymond had become an expert at extracting himself from body cam footage when necessary. A technical glitch here, a power failure there. The excuses were numerous, and the department's oversight laughably minimal. As he turned onto Willow Street, something caught his eye. A black man in a gray hoodie and jeans walking slowly down the sidewalk, looking at houses. Raymond immediately slowed his patrol car, domestic disturbance forgotten. The man wasn't doing anything illegal, just walking, but Raymond's instincts, honed by years of prejudice disguised as experience, screamed suspicious. What Raymond didn't know was that the man in the hoodie was Special Agent Jamal Washington, 34, 8 years with the FBI, and currently working deep undercover. For the past 6 months, Jamal had been investigating a corruption ring within the Oak Ridge Heights Police Department. His current focus, officers who systematically targeted minorities, planted evidence, and covered for each other's misconduct. Jamal noticed the patrol car slowing down. He kept his pace steady, his eyes forward. The small camera disguised as a button on his hoodie was recording everything. In his earpiece, his handler's voice came through, "Stay calm, Jamal. This might be nothing." But Jamal knew better. He'd studied the patterns, read the complaints. Oak Ridge Heights PD had a problem, and according to his intel, Officer Raymond Holt was at the center of it. The patrol car pulled alongside him. The window rolled down further. "Hey, you. Stop right there," Raymond called out, his voice carrying that unmistakable authoritative edge that brooked no argument. Jamal stopped, turning slowly toward the car. He kept his hands visible, his movements deliberate. He'd been trained for this, had role-played this exact scenario dozens of times. But the reality of being profiled still stung, still awakened a primal fear that no amount of FBI training could fully erase. "Can I help you, officer?" Jamal asked, his voice carefully modulated to be neither challenging nor submissive. Raymond stepped out of his car, hand resting casually on his holstered weapon. "What are you doing in this neighborhood?" The question hung in the air between them. Both men knew what it really meant. What is someone who looks like you doing in a neighborhood like this? "I'm just walking, sir. I'm meeting a friend for lunch." The lie came easily to Jamal. In reality, he was surveilling the home of Lieutenant Gregory Davis, another officer suspected of involvement in the corruption ring. Raymond's eyes narrowed. "ID. May I ask why you need my identification, officer? I'm not driving, and I haven't committed any crime. Jamal knew his rights, and he knew Raymond had no legal basis for the stop. This was textbook racial profiling. Raymond took a step closer, his face hardening. I said, ID. No, don't make this difficult. Jamal weighed his options. As an undercover agent, he carried a false identity, revealing it would give him legal protection but wouldn't serve his investigation. The goal was to document the officer's behavior, not shut it down prematurely. I'm not required to provide identification without reasonable suspicion that I've committed a crime, Jamal stated calmly, though his heart was now pounding against his ribs. Have I committed a crime, officer? Raymond's jaw tightened, a vein pulsing visibly in his neck. You fit the description of a suspect in a burglary case. Several homes in this area have been broken into recently. It was a lie, and both men knew it. There had been no recent burglaries in Oak Ridge Heights. Jamal had studied the crime reports thoroughly as part of his preparation. I understand, officer, but I've just been walking down the street. I haven't approached any houses or done anything suspicious. Jamal maintained eye contact, his voice level despite the adrenaline now coursing through his system. Raymond moved closer, invading Jamal's personal space. Turn around and put your hands against the car. Officer, I don't believe that's necessary. I've done nothing wrong. Raymond's hand moved from his holster to his baton. That wasn't a request. Jamal stood his ground, careful not to make any sudden movements. I understand you're doing your job, but I believe this constitutes an illegal stop and search. I'd like to speak with your supervising officer. The mention of a supervisor was the match to Raymond's fuse. In his 15 years, he'd built a reputation as an officer who got results, who kept certain elements out of the good neighborhoods. He wasn't accustomed to being questioned, especially not by those he considered beneath him. Last warning. Turn around and put your hands on the car, or I'll consider you resistant. Jamal knew he was at a crossroads. His training told him to comply now and fight the injustice later. But his assignment required him to document the full extent of the officer's misconduct. Officer, I'm going to comply, but I want to state clearly that I believe this stop is unconstitutional and Raymond moved with unexpected speed for his bulky frame. His left hand grabbed Jamal's shoulder, while his right closed into a fist that connected solidly with Jamal's ribs. The pain was immediate and sharp, driving the air from Jamal's lungs. Stop resisting, Raymond shouted, loud enough for anyone nearby to hear, establishing his narrative even as Jamal doubled over from the punch. Before Jamal could recover, Raymond spun him around, slamming him face first against the patrol car. The impact split Jamal's lip, sending a trickle of blood down his chin and onto his gray hoodie. I said stop resisting, Raymond repeated, though Jamal wasn't fighting back. With practiced efficiency, Raymond wrenched Jamal's arms behind his back and snapped handcuffs around his wrists, tightening them until they bit into the skin. Through the pain and shock, Jamal remained focused. The camera on his hoodie was still recording. His earpiece had gone silent. Protocol dictated that his handler wouldn't intervene unless Jamal's life was in immediate danger. This was exactly the kind of evidence they needed, though Jamal hadn't anticipated becoming quite so personally involved in obtaining it. Raymond patted him down roughly, digging into pockets and groping areas where no weapon or contraband could possibly be hidden. It was humiliation disguised as procedure, a power play Jamal had seen documented in dozens of complaints against the department. What do we have here? Raymond pulled out Jamal's wallet, flipping it open to examine the contents. The ID inside was for James Walker, one of Jamal's undercover identities. A construction worker recently moved to town, with a clean record and all the proper documentation to withstand scrutiny. Raymond seemed disappointed not to find a criminal record or outstanding warrants. He moved on to the cell phone in Jamal's pocket, a standard model with heavy encryption that appeared completely normal to the untrained eye. So, James, Raymond said, emphasizing the name as if he didn't believe it. You want to tell me what you're really doing here? This isn't exactly a neighborhood where someone like you just takes a casual stroll. The implication was clear, and it took all of Jamal's training not to react. Like I said, officer, I'm meeting a friend for lunch. I was early and decided to walk around. Is that against the law now? Raymond's response was another sharp jab to the ribs, this one carefully placed where it wouldn't show. Watch your tone. You're already facing charges for resisting arrest and disorderly conduct. Want to add more? Jamal bit back a retort, tasting blood from his split lip. He'd been prepared for hostility, even prejudice, but the overt violence suggested Raymond operated with complete impunity. The thought was both professionally intriguing and personally terrifying. No, sir, Jamal managed, playing the role of a man properly cowed by authority. Raymond seemed satisfied with the submission. He opened the rear door of his patrol car. Get in. We're going to continue this conversation at the station. As Jamal was roughly guided into the back seat, he caught sight of an elderly woman watching from her porch across the street. A potential witness. He made brief eye contact with her before Raymond shoved his head down and closed the door. Inside the car, separated by a metal grate, Raymond called in to dispatch. Unit 447 to dispatch. Domestic disturbance was a false alarm. I've apprehended a suspicious individual matching the description from the Carlton Street burglaries. Bringing him in for questioning. Request backup at the station for processing. Copy that, Unit 447. Backup will meet you there. Raymond hung up the radio and met Jamal's eyes in the rearview mirror. You picked the wrong neighborhood, James. Oak Ridge Heights has standards, and we work hard to maintain them. The double meaning wasn't lost on Jamal. As the patrol car pulled away from the curb, he leaned his head against the window, mind racing despite his composed exterior. The investigation had just taken an unexpected turn, putting him directly in the crosshairs of his primary target. It was a dangerous position, but also an unprecedented opportunity. What Raymond didn't realize was that this assault, wasn't the beginning of Jamal's story with him. It was the middle. And if Jamal had his way, Raymond Holt's career was about to reach its end. The patrol car accelerated down Willow Street, carrying both men toward a confrontation neither fully anticipated, but which would change both their lives forever. The Oak Ridge Heights police station stood like a fortress of gray brick and tinted windows, its American flag hanging limply in the still summer air. Raymond's patrol car pulled into the reserved spot near the rear entrance, the one conveniently out of range of the security cameras. A calculated choice that Jamal noted despite the pain radiating from his ribs. End of the line, tough guy, Raymond said, cutting the engine and adjusting his rearview mirror to get a better look at his captive. Ready to tell me what you were really doing in that neighborhood? Jamal remained silent, his eyes meeting Raymond's in the mirror without flinching. The defiance clearly irritated the officer, whose knuckles whitened around the steering wheel. Have it your way, Raymond muttered, exiting the vehicle and circling around to the rear door. He yanked it open with unnecessary force. Oh, now. Jamal struggled to maneuver with his hands cuffed behind him. Raymond made no move to help, instead watching with thinly veiled satisfaction as Jamal awkwardly shuffled out of the back seat. Officer Holt. Got yourself a live one. A voice called from across the parking lot. Officer Derek Phillips, 31, jogged over from his own patrol car. Where Raymond was built like a bulldog, all muscle and menace, Phillips was leaner, with an openness to his face that hadn't yet been hardened by years on the force. His 7 years of service hadn't extinguished a certain boyish quality that made him appear younger than his age. Just some punk casing houses in Oak Ridge, Raymond replied, giving Jamal a rough shove toward the station entrance. Found him wandering around Willow Street, looking suspicious as hell. Phillips fell into step beside them, eyeing Jamal with what appeared to be concern rather than contempt. What happened to his face? He asked, noting the dried blood on Jamal's split lip. Resisted arrest, Raymond answered curtly. Had to show him the error of his ways. Phillips's expression flickered, a momentary tightening around the eyes that suggested discomfort with Raymond's explanation. Jamal caught it, filing the observation away. Maybe not all of Oak Ridge's finest shared Raymond's methods. Inside the station, the air conditioning raised goosebumps on Jamal's arms. The processing area was busy, officers filing reports, perpetrators waiting to be booked, phones ringing in a chaotic symphony of law enforcement at work. Raymond guided Jamal to a metal bench bolted to the floor and roughly pushed him down. Sit. Don't move. The command was accompanied by a warning squeeze to Jamal's shoulder, firm enough to leave bruises. Jamal watched Raymond stride to the booking desk, leaning in to speak with the sergeant on duty. The two exchanged words, punctuated by glances in Jamal's direction. Whatever Raymond was saying, it was clear he was building his narrative, crafting the story of Jamal's arrest before a single word was officially documented. Officer Phillips lingered nearby, pretending to review paperwork while clearly keeping an eye on the situation. His discomfort was palpable, a tension in his shoulders that spoke of internal conflict. Raymond returned, a triumphant smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. "We're going to take your prints, get your picture, and then have a little chat about what you were really doing in Oak Ridge Heights." "I've already told you why I was there," Jamal replied evenly. Raymond leaned down, his voice dropping to a whisper that only Jamal could hear. "And I've decided that's bullshit. We both know what your kind were doing in that neighborhood. The question is whether you were working alone or if I need to round up your friends too." The naked racism in the statement would have been shocking if Jamal hadn't spent months investigating Raymond's history. But hearing it directly, feeling the man's breath on his face as he spewed his prejudice, was still jarring. "My kind," Jamal repeated, loud enough for others to hear. "What exactly do you mean by that, Officer Holt?" Raymond straightened immediately, aware of the eyes now turning their way. "I mean burglars," he snapped, "but the damage was done." Several officers, Phillips included, had heard the exchange. "Let's get him processed," Raymond barked, grabbing Jamal's arm and hauling him to his feet. The next 30 minutes passed in a blur of bureaucratic procedure. Fingerprinting, mugshots, personal property inventoried and placed in a plastic bag. Raymond hovered throughout, directing each step with unnecessary aggression, as if personally affronted by Jamal's continued existence. "I need to use the restroom," Jamal said as they finished the paperwork. "You can hold it," Raymond replied dismissively. "It's been hours," Jamal persisted, knowing his rights and deliberately pushing back. "I'm entitled to basic facilities under department policy." Raymond's jaw tightened, but they were in full view of the processing area now, with too many witnesses to deny a reasonable request. "Phillips," he called out, "take our guest to the bathroom." "Don't uncuff him." Phillips nodded, moving forward to take Jamal's arm. His grip was firm but not painful, a stark contrast to Raymond's handling. As they walked down the corridor toward the restrooms, Phillips kept his voice low. "He roughed you up pretty bad, didn't he?" Before bringing you in, Jamal measured his response carefully. "Is that standard procedure in Oak Ridge Heights?" Phillips's eyes darted around, checking for listeners. "Look, I can't speak against a fellow officer, but this doesn't sit right with me." "What exactly did you do?" "I was walking down a public street," Jamal replied simply. "That's it." They reached the bathroom door, and Phillips hesitated. "This is awkward, but I'm supposed to keep an eye on you." "Department policy." "I understand," Jamal said, "but I need my hands." "Unless you're volunteering to help." Phillips flushed, clearly uncomfortable. He glanced back down the empty hallway, then made a decision. "Turn around," he said quietly, pulling out his keys. "Make it quick. If Holt catches me doing this, we're both in trouble." It was a small act of decency, but it told Jamal volumes about Officer Phillips. As the cuffs loosened, Jamal rubbed his wrists, noting the raw skin where the metal had dug in. "Thanks," he said sincerely. Phillips nodded, avoiding eye contact. 3 minutes. That's all I can give you." Inside the bathroom, Jamal moved quickly. The moment the door closed, he pulled out a small device that had been hidden in the lining of his shoe, a backup transmitter that his handlers could use to track his location if the primary one failed. He activated it with practiced efficiency, then turned to actually use the facilities as cover for his actions. When he emerged, Phillips was waiting anxiously, checking his watch. "Hands behind your back," he said, loud enough for anyone passing by to hear. Jamal complied, feeling the cuffs click back into place, though noticeably looser than before. As they walked back toward the processing area, Jamal decided to take a calculated risk. "Officer Phillips, I need to tell you something important," he began quietly. "Save it for your statement," Phillips replied automatically, but his pace slowed slightly. "I'm not who Officer Holt thinks I am," Jamal continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "And I think you already suspect that something isn't right about this arrest." Phillips's eyes flickered nervously. "What are you talking about?" Before Jamal could answer, they rounded the corner to find Raymond waiting, arms crossed and expression thunderous. "What took so long?" he demanded. "Sorry, sir," Phillips replied. "Everything's fine." Raymond grabbed Jamal's arm, pulling him away from Phillips. "I'll take it from here. The interrogation room is ready." The interrogation room turned out to be little more than a storage closet with a metal table and 2 chairs, an unofficial space where conversations happen off the record. Jamal recognized it from descriptions and prior complaints against the department. No cameras, no witnesses, no accountability. Raymond shoved him into a chair, the metal legs scraping against concrete. "Now, James," he said, making air quotes around the name. "Let's cut the crap. You're going to tell me what you were really doing in that neighborhood, or things are going to get very uncomfortable for you." "I've already told you," Jamal replied, maintaining his cover. "I was walking to meet a friend." "This friend have a name? An address? Or are they as imaginary as your innocence?" Jamal had a cover story prepared, complete with a fake friend's name and address. But something told him it wouldn't matter. Raymond wasn't interested in verification. He was building a case on fabricated grounds. "His name is Michael Deacon," Jamal said. "He lives on Carlton Street, number 1442. Raymond's eyes narrowed. The address was real, carefully selected as part of Jamal's cover. "We'll see about that," he said, but made no move to actually check. Instead, he began to pace the small room. "Here's what I think happened. I think you and your buddies have been hitting houses all over Oak Ridge Heights. I think you were casing your next target when I caught you. And I think you're going to give me names, dates, and addresses if you want any chance of seeing daylight before Christmas." "That's not what happened," Jamal insisted. "You can check my background. I've never been arrested. I work construction for Wilson Builders. I started 3 months ago after moving here from Detroit." "Yeah, they all say that," Raymond sneered. "Clean record, honest job, wrong place at the wrong time. Save it for someone who was born yesterday." The door opened suddenly, and Officer Phillips appeared, slightly out of breath. "Sir, there's something you need to see." Raymond turned, irritated at the interruption. "What is it, Phillips?" "I'm in the middle of something here." "It's about him," Phillips said, nodding toward Jamal. "We ran his wallet contents through the system, and, well, you need to see this." A flicker of concern crossed Raymond's face. "Watch him," he ordered, stepping out into the hallway with Phillips. Alone for a moment, Jamal took stock of his situation. The hidden camera in his hoodie button was still recording. The backup transmitter was active. His cover identity should hold up to scrutiny, but there was always the risk of... The door burst open, and Raymond stormed back in, his face a mask of confusion and growing alarm. Behind him, Phillips looked equally stunned, holding a plastic evidence bag containing Jamal's wallet. "Who the hell are you?" Raymond demanded, slamming his hands on the table. "I told you. My name is James Walker. I work construction." "Bullshit." Raymond reached into the evidence bag and pulled out what appeared to be Jamal's ID. But it wasn't the construction worker's license that should have been there. Instead, he held up an FBI credentials folder that had been hidden in a secret compartment of the wallet. "Explain this." Jamal's heart raced, but he kept his expression neutral. This wasn't part of the plan. The FBI credentials were his real ones, not meant to be discovered unless an absolute emergency. Someone had deliberately exposed them, a move that could only have come from higher up. "Special Agent Jamal Washington, Federal Bureau of Investigation," he said calmly, dropping the act entirely. "And you, Officer Holt, are in serious trouble." The color drained from Raymond's face. "This is a joke. A fake ID. It has to be." "It's not a fake," Phillips said, his voice strained. "We verified it 3 times. He's FBI." Raymond backed away from the table, as if it had suddenly burst into flames. "You can't be. You were. You were just walking down the street?" Jamal finished for him. "Yes, I was. And you assaulted a federal agent without provocation, fabricated charges, and made several racist remarks that have all been recorded." He nodded toward the button on his hoodie. "This entire interaction is already being transmitted to my team. They've been watching since you first approached me on Willow Street." As if on cue, a commotion erupted in the hallway outside. Raised voices, heavy footsteps, the unmistakable authority of federal agents making their presence known. The door swung open to reveal FBI Director Thomas Bennett himself, a tall, imposing figure at 58, with steel-gray hair and the bearing of a man accustomed to command. Behind him stood 4 agents in tactical gear, their expressions grim. "Officer Raymond Holt?" Bennett's voice filled the small room, though he spoke barely above a normal volume. Raymond seemed to physically shrink. "Yes, sir. I'm FBI Director Thomas Bennett. You are holding one of my agents. Uncuff him. Now." Raymond fumbled with the keys, his hands shaking so badly that Phillips had to step in to help. As the cuffs fell away, Jamal stood, rubbing his wrists and nodding thanks to Phillips. Agent Washington, Bennett said, his eyes taking in the split lip and the way Jamal favored his right side where Raymond had struck him. Are you all right? I'm fine, sir, Jamal replied professionally. Bennett's gaze hardened as it returned to Raymond. Officer Holt, you are facing serious charges, including civil rights violations, assault on a federal officer, filing false reports, and obstruction of justice. I suggest you find representation immediately. Raymond's face had gone from pale to gray. There's been a misunderstanding. I was just following procedure for suspicious. Save it. Bennett cut him off sharply. We have the entire incident on video, including your comments about his kind and what happened before you brought him to the station. Phillips shifted uncomfortably beside Raymond, clearly wrestling with his conscience. Sir, he said, addressing Director Bennett. I believe Officer Holt's body camera malfunctioned during the arrest. How convenient, Bennett remarked dryly. And apparently a common occurrence when Officer Holt interacts with minorities. According to our investigation, the word investigation landed like a bomb in the small room. Raymond's eyes widened as understanding dawned. You were investigating me. All along. Jamal straightened his hoodie, wincing slightly at the pain in his ribs. Not just you, Officer Holt. For the past 6 months, I've been building a case on corruption and racial profiling within the Oak Ridge Heights Police Department. You've been on our radar for 3 of those months. This can't be happening, Raymond muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Oh, but it is, Bennett assured him. Agent Washington was conducting legitimate surveillance as part of an ongoing federal investigation when you decided to harass him solely based on his race. You couldn't have handed us a more perfect demonstration of exactly what we've been investigating. The full weight of the situation seemed to finally hit Raymond. His career was over. His freedom was in jeopardy. And it had all unfolded because he couldn't resist the urge to harass a black man walking down the street. I want a lawyer, he said weakly. You'll need one, Bennett agreed. Agent Washington wasn't just any undercover operative. He was specifically assigned to this case because of his exceptional record in exposing police corruption. You managed to assault the one man in this town who could single-handedly end your career and potentially send you to prison. Phillips looked from Jamal to Raymond, then back to the FBI director. Sir, what happens now? To the department, Bennett's expression softened slightly. That depends on the extent of the corruption we uncover, Officer Phillips. Individual officers will be judged by their actions, not blanket assumptions. Ironic, given the circumstances. Raymond sank back into a chair, head in his hands, the very picture of a man watching his life crumble before his eyes. The power dynamic had flipped so completely, so suddenly, that he seemed unable to process it. Jamal pulled Director Bennett aside, speaking quietly. Sir, there's something you should know about Officer Phillips. He showed concern for my well-being and loosened my cuffs when taking me to the restroom. I believe he may be one of the good ones. Bennett nodded thoughtfully, studying Phillips from across the room. We'll take that into consideration. Right now, our priority is you. Medical attention, debriefing, and then we move forward with the case. As they prepared to leave, Jamal paused beside Raymond, who hadn't moved from his dejected position. You know what the worst part is, Officer Holt? If you had simply treated me with basic human dignity, if you had approached me respectfully and asked legitimate questions instead of leading with prejudice and violence, you might have never revealed yourself. Your bigotry didn't just hurt me, it destroyed you. Raymond didn't respond, didn't even look up. The man who had swaggered with such confidence just hours before now seemed hollow, a shell emptied of the arrogance that had defined him. In the hallway outside, the station had fallen into stunned silence. Officers stood frozen at their desks, watching as the FBI director escorted Jamal through their domain, for armed agents flanking them in a clear show of federal authority. Director Bennett paused at the main desk, addressing the wide-eyed sergeant who had processed Jamal's bogus arrest. I suggest you preserve all records related to Officer Holt's activities. All of them. We'll be back with warrants. Lots of them. As they stepped out into the summer heat, Jamal squinted against the sudden brightness. FBI vehicles lined the parking lot, a stark visual representation of how quickly and thoroughly Raymond's world had been upended. Was revealing my identity part of the plan? Jamal asked as they walked toward the cars. Bennett's expression was grim but satisfied. Not initially. But when we saw what was happening, we made a decision. This was too perfect an opportunity to pass up. Officer Holt didn't just hand us evidence of his own misconduct. He inadvertently gave us leverage against the entire corrupt system he's part of. Jamal nodded, understanding the strategic choice. And now, Bennett said, opening the car door for his injured agent, we use what happened today to tear open the rot at the core of Oak Ridge Heights PD. And you, Agent Washington, just became the face of that effort. As the FBI caravan pulled away from the station, Jamal caught a glimpse of Officer Phillips watching from the entrance, his expression unreadable. Whatever came next would reshape not just Raymond Holt's future, but the entire power structure of Oak Ridge Heights. And it had all begun with a racist cop making the worst mistake of his career, underestimating a black man simply walking down the street. 3 weeks passed like a whirlwind of depositions, evidence processing, and media frenzy. The story had exploded across national headlines. FBI agent assaulted during undercover police corruption investigation. Raymond Holt's face was splashed across screens nationwide, becoming the poster child for police misconduct overnight. The raid on Raymond's modest ranch home revealed far more than anyone anticipated. Hidden in a locked safe in his basement, investigators found nearly $200,000 in cash, a collection of watches and jewelry reported stolen in unsolved burglaries, and most damning of all, a meticulous ledger detailing payoffs from local drug dealers who'd purchased protection. Raymond sat alone in an interrogation room at the federal building, the tables now thoroughly turned. No lawyer beside him, he'd cycled through 3 already, each one abandoning his case as the evidence mounted. His police union had quietly distanced itself, citing the extreme and unusual nature of the allegations. The door opened, and Jamal Washington entered, his split lip healed but a faint bruise still visible on his jawline. He carried a thick folder, which he placed carefully on the table before sitting across from Raymond. Agent Washington, Raymond acknowledged flatly. The bravado was gone, replaced by a hollow resignation. Mr. Holt, Jamal replied, deliberately omitting his former title. Thank you for agreeing to speak with me. Like I had a choice, Raymond muttered. Jamal opened the folder, removing a photograph of a young man in a graduation gown. Do you recognize this person? Raymond's eyes flickered with recognition, then confusion. That's my brother Jackson. Where did you get this? Your brother applied to the FBI Academy 16 months ago, Jamal said calmly. He was highly qualified, military background, bachelor's in criminal justice, exceptional physical fitness scores. Raymond's brow furrowed. He never told me he applied to the FBI. He said he was rejected from the State Police Academy. He lied, Jamal replied simply. He was rejected from the FBI Academy after I conducted his background check. The revelation hit Raymond like a physical blow. You? Jamal nodded. Jackson Holt was an exemplary candidate on paper. But during the extensive background investigation, I interviewed several of his former classmates and colleagues. They painted a disturbing picture of racial attitudes and beliefs that mirrored your own. The apple didn't fall far from the tree, it seems. Raymond's face flushed with anger. You ruined my brother's career before you ever met me? I prevented someone with documented racist beliefs from obtaining a position of power in federal law enforcement, Jamal corrected. That was my job. Just as investigating police corruption in Oak Ridge Heights became my job, a job that led me directly to you. The coincidence was too much for Raymond to process. So this was personal? Some kind of vendetta? No, Jamal said firmly. When I was assigned to investigate corruption in Oak Ridge Heights, I had no idea you were Jackson Holt's brother. It was only after your name appeared in multiple complaints that I made the connection. Cosmic irony, you might call it. Raymond leaned back, hollow laughter escaping his lips. So I'm supposed to believe that out of all the FBI agents they could have sent, they just happened to send the one who rejected my brother? The universe has a way of balancing the scales, Jamal said quietly. But I'm not here to discuss philosophy. I'm here to offer you a deal. Raymond's cynical laugh died. A deal? With all you've got on me, why would you offer me anything? Because we both know you weren't operating alone, Jamal said, reaching into the folder again and removing a series of surveillance photographs. These men, all officers in your department, are part of the same corruption ring. What we don't have yet is the full picture of how it operates and who leads it. Raymond stared at the photos, his expression unreadable. And you think I'll flip on them? You think I'm that kind of guy? I think you're the kind of guy who looks out for Raymond Holt first and foremost, Jamal replied bluntly. And right now, Raymond Holt is facing 25 to 30 years in federal prison. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the subtle hum of the air conditioning. Raymond's gaze moved from the photographs to Jamal's face, searching for any sign of deception or weakness. "What's the deal?" he finally asked. "Names, dates, operations. Everything you know about who's involved and how deep it goes. In exchange, we recommend 10 years instead of 30, with possibility of parole after 7. Raymond snorted. "That's still a decade of my life. Better than 3, Jamal countered. "And consider this, the prison where convicted former police officers serve their time. The guards there are predominantly men of color. Men who've watched people like them suffer at the hands of corrupt officers their whole lives. How do you think they'll treat you for 30 years? The implication wasn't lost on Raymond. His shoulders sagged slightly, the first genuine sign of defeat. "I need time to think," he said. "You have until tomorrow morning," Jamal replied, standing. "After that, we proceed with the full charges." As Jamal gathered his materials, Raymond spoke again, his voice smaller than before. "You know what's crazy? If I just kept driving that day, if I just left you alone, none of this would be happening. That's the thing about prejudice, Mr. Holt. It doesn't just hurt others, it blinds you. Your inability to see me as anything but a suspect is what brought you down." When Jamal left, Raymond remained motionless, staring at his reflection in the one-way glass, a man confronting the consequences of a lifetime of choices. The next morning, Raymond accepted the deal. His testimony implicated 17 officers across 3 precincts in a corruption ring that had operated for nearly a decade. At the center of it all, the mastermind, Officer Darren Miller, Raymond's former partner and mentor. 6 months later, Jamal stood before a class of new recruits at the FBI Academy. His presentation on police corruption had become required viewing for all trainees. "The Oak Ridge Heights case teaches us that justice isn't just about catching criminals," he concluded. "It's about holding accountable those who abuse the power entrusted to them." As the lights came up and the applause died down, Jamal noticed a familiar face in the back row. Officer Derek Phillips, now FBI trainee Phillips, nodded respectfully. After the presentation, Phillips approached. "Agent Washington, I wanted to thank you. After that day, I couldn't stay with the department knowing what was happening." "You made the right choice," Jamal said, extending his hand. "The hardest part of tackling systemic problems is recognizing when you're part of the system." Miles away, in a medium-security federal prison, Raymond Holt was escorted to his new cell block. The guard walking beside him was tall, confident, with a name tag reading Wilson. "You're in Block D," the guard informed him. "Home sweet home for the next 7 to 10 years. Raymond kept his eyes forward, refusing to make eye contact, a survival tactic he developed during his first months inside. "You know," the guard continued conversationally, "when they told me you were coming to my block, I almost requested a transfer. But then I thought, nah, this is too perfect." Something in the guard's voice made Raymond look up. Recognition dawned slowly, then crashed over him like a wave. "You don't remember me, do you?" Guard Wilson asked. 3 years ago, you pulled me over. Claimed my taillight was out. Then you found drugs in my car. Drugs that mysteriously disappeared from evidence before my trial. Still cost me my job, my reputation. All because you wanted to fill your monthly quota." Raymond's blood ran cold as the realization set in. His past had circled back yet again, this time in the form of a man who would control his daily existence for years to come. "Welcome to Block D, Holt," Wilson said, smiling as he unlocked the cell door. "We're going to get to know each other real well." As the door clanged shut behind him, Raymond understood that his true punishment wasn't just the years he'd spend behind bars, but having to live in a world where the power dynamic he'd exploited for so long had been irrevocably reversed. Karma, it seemed, had finally caught up with Raymond Holt, and it was wearing a guard's uniform.